Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Pathfinder 2E and the new magic system that deals specifically with how spells are cast, specifically verbal, somatic, and material casting components, casting processes, casting methods. All right, and now the reason why I'm talking about this today is I have been watching carefully the Pathfinder 2E playtest. The new materials that's coming out on Paizo's website, the building of it, how the community's responding to it, the podcasts that are surrounding it, the YouTube channels that are doing content on it, and I'm really excited to see that there's very much a sense that this is incredibly important to the overall tabletop role-playing game community, and I really think it is. This is something really special that is happening. Well, why is this special? Why is this not just another tabletop role-playing game that's being made, which there are tons of? There are hundreds of tabletop role-playing games being made every single year. Like, it's crazy how many tabletop role-playing games are being made, because they're just so fun to create. So why is this one special? Well, the reason why is Paizo is one of the few, it's one of the physical headquarter producers. So the U.S. physical headquarter producers. So there are companies that create tabletop role-playing games, and the vast majority of them do not have any physical headquarters. If you have a physical headquarters, it really means that you are at the top tier, and you are employing people full-time to create tabletop role-playing games. So physical headquarters means scale. Physical headquarters means employing people full-time. Physical headquarters means very high-end art, very high-end design. Physical headquarters really means scale, and that's important in this industry. The entire industry is actually estimated to be around $35 to $40 million a year, which is woefully small. ICV2 brought that number out last year. It's really important, right? So it shows us where we're starting. Because there's so few metrics on our industry, it's important, right? And the physical headquarters is an incredibly important metric, right? So recently, I think it was Mike Harrison, one of my subscribers, actually called out specifically that there are 3 U.S. tabletop role-playing game producers who have physical headquarters that I was not aware of. Catalyst Games, they make Shadowrun. Steve Jackson Games, they make GURPS, right? And Green Ronin Press, they have the Dragon Age tabletop role-playing game, and they make incredibly high-quality material, right? So you're talking, Steve Jackson Games. So the 3 that I just mentioned: Catalyst, Green Ronin, Steve Jackson Games, Paizo's in there, Wizards of the Coast is in there, and you know what? So that's 5 right there, right? And I know there's 1 or 2 more, right? Oh, FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, is 6, right? And believe it or not, I have not been able to find any evidence that I thought for sure that Monty Cook Games and Evil Hat Games had physical headquarters. And the deeper I'm looking into it, I'm thinking they might not, which is interesting. So the number of U.S. physical headquarters TRPG producers is under 10, right? Under 10, right? And I think, and so, Paizo is one of them. Paizo is one of those groups that has a physical headquarters. And so when they bring a project forward, there's a lot on the line here. There's people's jobs are on the line. This isn't a garage band, right? This is not, a group piling up their speakers in the truck and driving 50 miles to play a bar in the sticks. This is the real deal, right? And one of the reasons why is, at this scale, there is a possibility for movies, there is a possibility for video games. Both of those industries bring tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and billions of dollars to the table, right? And at that scale, it changes. That's where a tabletop role-playing game can change culture, change society way more than it can in its book method, in its book form, right? So that's why, it's so important to me to be watching this carefully to see what's happening. So as we're watching Pathfinder 2E being built, what I have really been underwhelmed by what I've seen, by the design. And the reason why is it looks like an incredible amount of attention is being paid to build this new version. But the version is so close to Pathfinder 1E that I'm like, why is this being done? And the reality is there's a lot of reasons to do a new edition that has very little change from the old, right? And the reason why is a new edition gets people excited. It's going to be, even small things can mean something to a small portion of the community, right? A small change could be a big deal. There are people who, I'm not kidding, there was a tabletop role-playing game that was created because the designer didn't like the way Dungeons & Dragons handled longbows, literally just longbows. That one thing, the person was really into longbows and archery, and it's oh, the numbers are all wrong. Let's create an entirely new tabletop role-playing game so that this one game, so that is represented correctly here, right? And it's just crazy. That's not a good reason to create a new tabletop role-playing game. So to me, Pathfinder 2E for a while has been looking like a clone of Pathfinder 1E, a clone of Dungeons and Dragons, which clearly that is the birthplace of Pathfinder. It's a hard reality for them, but it really is a Dungeons and Dragons clone, right? But it has value in the community because they're doing something that is really unique in creating another place for people to play, especially at scale. Because when Wizards of the Coast is at scale with Dungeons and Dragons, right? And just being at that scale, you're going to have people who get upset with the brand, who get upset with the art, they get upset with the rules, they get upset with just one aspect of the game, and they need a place to go. And so the number 2 slot, especially in America, where we have so much and such an abundance of wealth and such an abundance of abilities to have multiple options. There's not one cereal at the grocery store. There's multiples, and that's the same thing in TRPGs. You have options. If you don't like something, and Paizo's if you don't like D&D, we're going to make the best D&D clone you can, right? And if you look at D&D clones, there's a lot of reasons to, when people are making D&D clones, they're it goes right down the line. So, what D&D clone has the most elegantly simple rule set? Well, that would be Tiny D6. What D&D clone has the most player agency? Well, that would be Dungeon World. What tabletop role-playing game has the most loyalty to the percentile system? Well, that would be Open Quest, right? And so there is a real and that list just goes on and on and on, right? There's a very long list of Dungeons and Dragons clones, right? And so then the question becomes, why is Pathfinder making this game, right? And I think we're still seeing the answer to that question, right? It's still being shown to us. I think the reality is they've reached a point where they absolutely need a second edition just to maintain interest in the game. But you cannot count Paizo out because they are a U.S. physical headquarters, tabletop role game producers. That is a very, very short list, and whatever they do matters to the entire community because they're setting the pace. They're doing bleeding edge work. They're doing work that costs money and takes risk, right? And everybody else can learn from them, right? And so it's tough, and I have a lot of respect for what they're attempting to do. All right. Everything I've seen so far within Pathfinder 2E has been just tweaks, right? Just minor stuff, nothing exciting, right? That changed with verbal, somatic, material, casting elements, right? So basically, they came out and they said, okay, the turn is 3 actions. You get 3 actions. So with those 3 actions, you can attack. You might get some minuses for each attack. You can move, attack, move. You can move, attack. You can attack, move, and attack, move, and move. I probably already said that one. And so, basically there's a lot of, with those 3 actions and just kind of simplifying it to that, you get a lot of flexibility, right? But they had not talked about what this means for specifically for, what does this mean for spells, right? And they didn't break it out because it was complex, right? And I'll say this is a game changer. This is big. This really will change the way spells work in Pathfinder 2e. And this is something that's so powerful that when it's done, I think there's a real possibility that Wizards of the Coast will look sideways and go, oh crap, that's a really good idea. Man, that is super dope. Why didn't we think of that? Right? Because Mike Burrows is a genius. He thinks of almost everything, but yeah, he can't think of everything. He's only human, right? All right. So what is the verbal, the somatic, and the material casting elements? Sorry, casting process. I think that's the best way of putting it. So here's the thing: you cast a spell with one action. You have 3 actions every turn. If you cast a spell with 1 action, it's verbal. Okay. So you can bet that verbal spells are, so at the lowest level, it looks like, okay, we'll keep going. And basically, you can choose how you want to cast a spell. So you can invest as much as you want of your turn into the spell, okay? So if you cast a spell with verbal, it does very low effect, okay? If you cast your spell with verbal and somatic, and by the way, yeah, verbal, somatic, and material. Let me explain those real quick. So verbal is you're casting fireball and you go Oxio fireball. You know, you say it with, actually you say Oxio fireball, right? That's the verbal component. Just saying words creates the spell. And I know that's the wrong words, but you know, play along here. All right, so of somatic. So so somatic would be you would cast the spell, and it looks like the way they're doing it in Pathfinder 2 is it ramps up. You do verbal and somatic, or you do verbal and somatic and material. It doesn't look like they're going to do just, oh, you just do material, you know, or you just do somatic. It's verbal and somatic, or verbal and somatic and material. So somatic is you actually move your body. You move your hands or your legs or even your head. You have to have physical body movement, which means that if you were restrained, you could not logically cast the spell, okay? Forget that I said head. I don't think you can cast with just your head because that's too close to verbal. All right, so and then material. Material is there is a material component for this spell, and you have to say the words, you have to do the motions, and then you have to have an owl feather that is consumed in order to cast a spell, right? So the way they're doing it is, if you could take like a healing spell. If you cast it with verbal, and this is not absolutely correct, this is just the scale of it. You do 1d8, okay? If you do verbal and somatic, you could do 1d8 healing to anyone within 30 feet. You don't even have to touch them, right? With verbal, you have to touch them, and you do 1d8. With verbal, this is just an example, but it's very close to what they actually produced. You could do with verbal somatic, you could do healing. You could do healing, and you could do 1d8, and you could heal up to 30 feet, right? With the component, with material, verbal somatic material, you can do 1d8 up to 30 feet in an area of effect around you, which means that everyone around you that you choose gets healed, and any undead will take damage. That's powerful. That is a major change. And in order to do that, so if you cast a verbal spell, you can cast your you can. So here's what you can do with a verbal spell. You could move, cast verbal, and attack. That's big, right? You could, with verbal, you could move, verbal, move. With a verbal spell, you could verbal, move. There's just a ton of options there, right? With you could also do verbal somatic, taking up 2 parts of your 3 actions, and then you could attack, right? This is getting crazy, right? And if you do verbal somatic material, you do nothing else. You don't move, you don't attack, you don't do anything, right? But that right there is massive. Like the amount of that is truly unique. That has never existed within tabletop role-playing games before, in any game I've ever seen. That's certainly never existed within Dungeons and Dragons. It's elegant, it's simple, it makes a ton of logical sense. It actually, it does not dishonor. It actually keeps honoring Vancian magic, right? There's so many, like, it's a big deal, right? So this is the first thing that has come out of the Pathfinder playtest 2E that I am excited about. I think it's really, it's the first time I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to buy that book. Like, and I think regardless, I would definitely pick up Pathfinder 2E. Just from a historical perspective, I need to own it. It needs to be on my shelf. I played Pathfinder. I played several Pathfinder campaigns. It does have a warm spot in my heart. I'm going to admit my bias. I'm a TRPG commentator. And basically I want you to be aware of the biases. I think, TRPG commentators, our industry is just not large enough to have objective reporters. There really aren't any, right? The vast majority of TRPG commentators, they're doing it for a reason. And we just don't have the scale to have objective reporter types. So, I don't know where I really land on Pathfinder. I really have some beef with Pathfinder just from their days of beating Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition and celebrating that victory. But I've really begun to really understand the importance of a number 2, right? And also I think one of the things too is I think Paizo could be settling into number 2, saying, hey, the Dungeons and Dragons came back, kicked us out of their yard, and we're no longer top dog, but we can do a good job of being number 2. And I do see the value of a rival. I see the value of, if Pathfinder isn't there pushing and trying to make the game better, it makes it easier for Wizards of the Coast to rest on their laurels with Dungeons & Dragons 6e. And I don't think they're doing that. They feel the pressure, right? And so, but verbal somatic material, it's brilliant. It is incredibly good game design. It honors Vancian magic. It's simple. It's elegant. It's powerful, and it could really change. It could make people excited about the game. It's really at the level of advantage disadvantage. Advantage disadvantage. One of the brilliant ideas to come out of Mike Merle's 5e, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's beautiful. It works really well. Rolling those 2 d20s, it pops, man. It is something. And I think verbal somatic material, this is an innovation that I think D&D will be jealous to have, and I will be excited to read about it in the Pathfinder 2E production book. So that's my take. Take care.